started here in just a moment. We'll give people in the UK clapping for the NHS another minute to join us. All right, yeah, we can go ahead and get started, and anybody who joins from here on out can join us. So welcome everybody to the second COVID-19 Cyber Threat Coalition Town Hall. I am Eric Galinkin, your community manager. I'm not on video because I just moved across the entire United States and look like trash, and none of you should have to deal with that. So you can see me next week when we do our next one. So a few administrative notes that I wanted to address real quick before we pass things off to Martin Grutten, who is going to talk about our cyber threat landscape. We've gotten a few comments about press in our channels, and we love and welcome people from the media. But it is worth noting that in unvetted channels, you should expect that that information is completely public and is shared as TLP white. If you want to share anything that isn't already available publicly, I recommend, we recommend flagging it TLP green and sharing that only within the vetted volunteers channels. If you are not a vetted volunteer and you would like to share or consume those bits of intelligence, please reach out to me or any other member of the steering committee, and we can help you, get into those channels and get involved. So without any further ado, please.
Hey, Eric, just a quick clarification, so we're not sending mixed messages.
Absolutely.
So for journalists, here, I'll turn my video back on. So for journalists, we're actually asking that people assume everything is TLP green, unless it's explicitly marked TLP white. And what that means is that anything that we say in our channels, even if they're unvetted in public, don't put it in your articles or reshare it unless you get explicit permission from the person who posted that information. We just want to bias against resharing stuff unless folks who posted it explicitly gave permission for that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than that, everything Eric said.
Okay. All right. Thanks so much, Josh. So now, without any further ado, you can go ahead and take it away, Martin.
Okay. Hi, I'm Martijn. I'm replacing Emily Austin, who leads the advisory group, which I'm a member of. We publish a weekly advisory, usually on Monday afternoon Eastern time, in which we look at the threat landscape and how it has changed with the pandemic and everything that's going on, and we try to provide advice to security professionals who could use that within their organization. So the latest advisory, which was published on Monday, 3 days ago, was the third advisory. We looked at registration of domains that appear to be related to COVID-19 or the coronavirus based on what it says, based on a domain name, like words in there or lookalike words in there. We'd already done this previous week using data from domain tools, and their classification using, for example, machine learning to determine which domains are going to be used for various bad things. And we noted that after there had been a peak of registration of such domains of about 5,000 a day late in the third week of March, this actually decreased, and now there's about 1,800 domains being registered every week, which is good news. It's the case of a curve flattening, not the most important curve, but it's still a curve flattening. I should say, I mean, it's not really clear what the reason behind this is. It could be random. Sometimes these things are random. It could be that cyber criminals have built up infrastructure that they're now ready to use. There could be many other things. But we'll keep track on that, and domain tools and possibly others will keep informing us of that. And I should say, I've seen a few other security vendors publishing blog posts about domain registrations, and I saw similarly shaped curves with a peak late in March and some decline after that. What we also did, and what we included in our advisory, was a survey among members of the coalition and the wider security community. These surveys they're very important because they help us understand both what changes people are seeing in the threat landscape, but also what changes they are making in the policies of their companies and organizations. So one thing we ask is what kind of threats they're seeing. The most common threats people are seeing are scams of various kinds, followed by credential phishing and malicious documents. Of course, these latter two threats have always been prevalent, or at least have been prevalent for years, and that's how most companies get infected, or how credentials get stolen. There's some other threats that are less prevalent. Ransomware is not seen very much. That's not, I think, because ransomware isn't or has stopped being prevalent, but ransomware is something that typically only affects organizations after they get infected with the first stage malware. So if you block malicious emails early enough, then you'll never see that it would have led to ransomware. But there are still a little over 10% people who say they see ransomware. We also looked at what kind of scams people are seeing. Not very surprising, we see people report information about COVID-19, sale of medical supplies and personal protective equipment, shipping notifications that have been going on for years. And we will continue to monitor what people are seeing and also how this changes over time as the pandemic continues and as it affects our life and our work. We also wrote something about general state of cybersecurity. We included a few links to digital threats that are using the COVID-19 as a lure in some kind of way. I think 4 links in the advisory. There's many more out there. Many security vendors write about this in some form. This is generally, we wrote about it in the previous advisory. This is really just a rebranding of existing threats. For example, last year you would have received emails saying, please open this attachment, it has a voicemail for you. And now it says, open this attachment, it has a voicemail about COVID-19 for you. Sometimes as simple as that. We also, however, while this is just a rebranding, there was a report by the FBI that says they have seen a quadrupling in threats. In quadrupling in reports of cybercrime to them since the start of the pandemic. Now, it's not always clear that report and an actual cybercrime are linked one-to-one, but I think a quadrupling does indicate that things are on the rise. And indeed, we in the survey of almost 80 volunteers, 80 members of the CCTC, more than 40% said they have indeed seen an increase in cyber threats against their organization. The good news is that only a very small minority of them said that existing products are and blocklists are somewhat ineffective against these threats. So generally speaking, yes, the threat landscape have changed. They're using different lures, but almost like under under the hood, it's still the same kind of threat. And your security products and security infrastructure was good enough in December, it's probably more or less good enough in April. But that's against existing threats. There is another concern that we wrote about. Almost every organization these days switched to entirely or almost entirely working from home, and more than half of the people responding to the survey says they think this has made the organization more vulnerable to cyber threats, even though only a small minority, less than 20%, say that they've actually lacked their security policies. And this concern is understandable. Even before the pandemic, a very common way for organizations to get infected is through remote access tools, whether it's the VPN solution or something like Microsoft's remote desktop. These were used by malicious actors to get inside, either through stolen credentials, could be phishing, could be credential reuse, or vulnerabilities in these in this kind of in these tools. So in the advisory, we advise organizations and security teams to make sure even more than before that you really patch these systems. It's very rare for organizations to get hacked by zero-day vulnerabilities in remote access tools. So as long as you keep on top of patching, you should be mostly fine. That's one thing. And of course, against stolen credentials or password reuse, two-factor authentication is a very, very important step, and we encourage everyone to enforce that as much as possible on their remote access tools. And one final thing, there was an advisory that we linked from the Dutch National Cybersecurity Center on remote work systems, and they also pointed out that these remote work systems are that past risk assessments simply don't hold anymore. So, for example, until 1 or 2 months ago, if your remote access tool was taken down, maybe there was a vulnerability that you didn't have time to patch, you could just take it down for a few days and tell everyone to come to the office, and this is suddenly not possible anymore. So yeah, that was what in the that's important. Do keep this in mind, and this is suddenly a very, very critical point of your organization. And that's all I have to say, unless there are any questions from me in particular. Otherwise, I'll hand it back to Eric.
All right, great. Well, I'll keep an eye on the Q&A, but I don't currently see anything for Martin. So Martin, thank you so much for that. And now, before we hand things off to Aaron, just to address some consternation that is 100% my fault for misspeaking. All indicators shared are assumed to be TLP green. If you do not know what the traffic light protocol is, we'll share this link out as we post about this in the future in announcements. You can find it at us-cert.gov/TLP. But essentially, the quick and dirty is that TLP green is assumed that it can be shared with peers and partner organizations, but not publicly, right? There has to be some kind of barrier, right? You are sharing it directly with someone who has an interest and not outside of the community. TLP white means that it can be shared with anyone for any reason, anywhere. So again, unless something is specifically labeled as TLP white, all members of the community should assume that it is TLP green. Oh, we have one. Martin, do you want to take that? We've got a question from Joe Farino in the Q&A.
Okay, let me read it. So let me just read the question out loud and think while I read. So, is anything being done to periodically reassess the intent or content of previously noted new domains to account for intent not being clear shortly after time of registration, checking for MX, SOA changes, DNS stuff, etc. I think that question, I mean, this part of the advisory is written by domain tools. I was going to say I would pass it on to them, but actually no. If you read the advisory, which I actually did, it says something that I had reassessed some domains from the beginning of the pandemic. Well, in the time when people started taking it so much seriously, which is mid-February. So they do reassess. I don't know exactly what their algorithms are and what it is public information, but yes, things are reassessed regularly. So yes, thanks, Joe. That's a good question.
All right, fantastic. So now I will hand it over to Aaron Higby, who is going to talk about email threats.
Hey, thanks a lot. Let me go ahead and get my deck up and confirm that you guys can see my corporate headshot, which I don't look anything and self-quarantine at home. So it's coming through okay?
Looks good to me.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you. I want to really show my appreciation to everyone that has volunteered to put this together. I'm not one of the principals here. I've just been someone that's been active in the Slack channel, trying to get some of our discoveries out to people that it might help. And I've been posting quite frequently in the Yara chat room as well as the email threats chat room as near real time as I can. Oftentimes we are kind of collecting things at the end of the day that we intend to share with the group. And so I think it would probably be helpful to kind of level set the type of information that we're after and how we get it, so that you can see how it's a bit different than your traditional threat intelligence. So Cofense is a company that was formerly known as PhishMe. Many of you probably are familiar with sending phishing simulations to people at work. So what Cofense is today is we represent the strategy for companies to deal with the phishing emails that make it past their secure email gateway stack. We're a global company. We primarily cater towards the enterprise. And the reason why the phishing simulation piece that I mentioned is important is because this is the way that I'm able to share all of the samples that I've been publishing in the email threats Slack channel since the beginning. Every one of those samples was sourced because some suspicious human at work was interacting with an email that they just thought was not quite right, and they decided to click that report phishing button. We have over 22 million of these active buttons installed in various enterprise desktops worldwide. People are encouraged to learn how to be suspicious through the phishing simulations. They click the button. That then goes to another one of our products called Triage, where analysts write Yara rules and other content to match these phishing attacks. It's through that lens that I was able to put together the samples that I've been sharing with the group so far. The types of things that we're seeing get to these employees, it's pretty much the same all that we've been seeing for a number of years now. These are COVID-19 or coronavirus themed versions of many of the same type of phishing templates that attackers have been using against the enterprise for quite some time. I'm going to flip through a few examples of them, but what you're going to see is there's a few unique ones where they've taken some care to come up with a new phishing lure, but many of them are just slapping the words COVID-19 or coronavirus on top of a phishing kit or something that they've already been using. So I'm going to start to get into it and explain why I think some of these things are particularly interesting. So this is a phishing email. It's particularly insidious because it is kind of trying to take advantage of the heightened sense of urgency and potentially fear about COVID-19, and it's looking like it's coming from a safety manager, and it has a Word doc attached to it. When you open that, what's probably the most interesting part of this, and for those that do a lot of automated analysis, you'll know what I'm talking about. What's particularly challenging about something like this is that document in and of itself isn't malicious. It's just a way to take someone to a SharePoint.com hosted website that then is hosting a phishing kit that makes it look like there's a document that the user is supposed to see, but it's fuzzy. So in order to see that document, they're encouraged to log in with their Office 365 credentials. And so the important pieces of this is, you know, if we're doing indicators on that first attachment, or we're scanning that for something malicious, we're not going to find anything there. It's the fact that that attachment redirects to a SharePoint.com site, which isn't one of these COVID-19 kind of typo squatting domains that's popping up. This is actually hosted on SharePoint.com, that then is trying to get someone to enter a username and password. And it's these chained examples are what are particularly problematic for secure email in the enterprise, because these are tactics out there that are meant to evade automated detection and analysis. The next example is somewhat similar. It's something that, you know, I think people should be on the lookout for, and it's kind of in this theme of Office 365 hosted phishing kits. Is the email appears to be some sort of coronavirus related update, and it looks like attachment, but there's not. That's just imagery inside the body of the email designed to take the victim to a sway.office.com. And before looking at this, I didn't even know what sway.office.com is. Again, the takeaway points here is there's nothing malicious in this document in and of itself. That's why it would get through perimeter security. And even the underlying URL, it's not some bad website. It's a legitimate Office 365 application. So when you click it, what the user's meant with is that teal blue screen, follow up on the COVID-19 related scams, and then they're encouraged to download or news. They're encouraged to then click download or view online. When they do that, they're kind of taken to this fuzzier phishing website that is obfuscating that something that looks like it might be a PDF document, or then they're then asked for their Office 365 credentials, again, trying to log in and instill those credentials. Probably a takeaway here is I think it's getting more challenging for network defenders to keep up with all the technology that Office 365 is adding from a day-to-day basis. So we're seeing Office 365 now abused with Windows.net, their essentially their source code repository, their online OneDrive, SharePoint, and now Sway. We've seen quite a few Sway links over the past 2 to 3 weeks that are using this redirect here to try to, again, fool automated URL analysis. Moving on, now we're getting into something that is a little bit more, is a little bit different, where this looks like some sort of M&A text where we need you to go open up some Excel spreadsheet. So it's a compelling email that's got more that business flavored communication. And I have to again stress that's more what Cofense plays in. We tend to prioritize our analysis on the phishing emails that are targeting businesses. We don't do a lot of the consumer fraud and identity theft phishing kits. So if a user were to click this link here, they get to this kind of two-stage login. And we're starting to see this as well, where the first initial page is just trying to get a username. And then after they enter it, they're redirected to a second site with a poorly put together fake looking Windows icon that's going to ask them for the password. We're not really sure why we're starting to see the frontline page, which is asking for the email account separate, which redirects to another form that's asking for the password. One of our guesses on that is this allows the attacker to keep the password form up longer before the browsers begin to categorize it as a phishing website. That's our best guess at why we've seen this evolution over the past couple of months. Again, getting into things that are more branded related to COVID-19, here's one that is impersonating the World Health Organization. Why I thought this one was particularly interesting is this shows that the attackers are getting out ahead of the news cycle, or they are reading the news cycle. And what it talks about is a new application called myhealth.app, or an application to track that offered by the WHO. This application doesn't actually exist, but if you read the press about it, they're talking about putting out an application to help track flus and other pandemics. So if you click that link, again, we're taken into kind of a 2 or 3 step sort of fish. The first one is just attempting to get a password out of the victim. So if they succeed in that, then they actually drop a file, a form grabber file on them that attempts to infect their computer. So I guess what they're thinking is, if I got someone on the hook who's willing to give me up the password, maybe they'll actually install this myhealth.exe that's looking like a official application from the WHO, but isn't, because this application doesn't exist yet. And I'm not watching the questions, so I'll have to come back to those, because I got a lot of examples for you guys and 25 minutes to get through them. The next kind of category of the phishing emails that we see making it past the email gateway stack and into users' inbox are attachments that aren't malicious, but they're just HTML that then tries to redirect them to a site that will either drop something malicious or ask them again for their username and password. And .html seems to be a favorite right now. Again, another tactic that this one had to defeat automated analysis and URL categorization was something very simple. HTML, first thing that is a CAPTCHA. And it's a very simple one. You just click, "I'm not a robot." And that's probably good enough to fool most of the sandboxes that are out there. So once a victim clicks, "I'm not a robot," then they're presented with the actual phishing site that's trying to elicit a username and password out of the victim. Getting back to our tried and true themes that we see a lot in enterprise phishing, you've received a voicemail. Someone sent you a file from a scanner. This one was kind of interesting because what the attacker did was they took their standard voicemail phishing kit and then they adapted it and just threw in the words COVID-19. You're going to see quite a bit of that. They tried to kind of up the authenticity by actually putting the iconography of a phone in the file itself. Again, this is one of those .html file attachments, just like the last example that I showed you. Okay, back into the theme of someone trying to share a file with you. This is something that we have seen for years and years and years, and it's just kind of taking on some of the COVID-19 themes and phrasing. Hey, I tried to send a file with you, but it was too big. It was 761 megs. But if you click this link and view the file, you can download it. When you go there, it asks you to first verify your identity. So there's no password field on that site first. But when you click next, then it will ask for that password. Saw an interesting one not too long ago that we put up there that was impersonating the Department of Health and Human Services. What was a bit unique about this is it was just a straight up attachment, and it was a Word doc where the Word doc was password protected. Most enterprise email gateways these days do a pretty good job at least allowing the configuration of blocking password protected zip files. A couple of years ago, once that began to frustrate attackers, we started to see them use the native passwording of these documents in order to try to get past that control. I think most of the gateways have caught up to that tactic, but there's still a few that are letting password protected Word docs through to the end user. Once again, it's not a password protected zip file, but it's the native passwording inside of Word that's trying to help the attacker evade automated analysis. Again, in that theme, here's a PDF. You open that up, it's benign. So if we scan the PDF, you wouldn't find anything particularly alarming about it. Has a click here to read more link. You open up that. Again, they don't want to show their phishing kit or potentially elicit an automated download that could be analyzed by a cuckoo or something like that. And so this is their attempt at a CAPTCHA where they have a password that they make it extremely easy for you to copy to your clipboard so that you can go ahead and download that document and bypass automated analysis. Attackers that are in the BEC and CEO fraud, they're latching on to the COVID-19 themes as well. We're seeing this in all different variants of BEC, from the very straightforward, I need you to process a wire, to it used to be iTunes gift cards, to I actually now need to buy meal tickets or meal cards for some of our distressed workers. So, again, the cyber criminals across the world, they're latching onto this opportunity, and many of them are retooling old phishing lures with some sort of COVID-19 coronavirus theme in order to hopefully show some success. I've been talking to the media a lot over the past couple of weeks, and one of the things that they are extremely inquisitive about and want to know is, because of people moving to remote work, are we starting to see an increase in phishing lures that are going after people that are having to rapidly transition to a WebEx or a Teams or a Skype or a Zoom and that sort of thing? And we're not. I'll just be clear there. I'll show you what we have been seeing. I saw something in the Slack chat a couple of days ago from another firm that seemed pretty interesting. Another question that we're getting from the media a lot is they're talking to organizations and they're saying, are you seeing a higher percentage of phishing attacks because of COVID-19? In my opinion, what's happening is when you ask a company that, then they go look at their user reports, or they go ask their SOC, and their SOC is able to produce some of the, and that there's a higher percentage of phishing attacks that are occurring right now. Our data does not show that. And we have a lot of customers and many SOCs deployed globally where we're able to get these stats and trends on. What we are seeing is phishing attacks by volume is about the same. However, the themes of COVID-19 and coronavirus is taking over many of the lures, but by volume, the attacks haven't risen because of this global pandemic. It's just opportunistic attackers that are using the theme. So we did start to go through our data to see, are attackers beginning to latch on to these lures of companies that are moving to remote work to try to compel them to click on these phishing emails. And this one was interesting to me. I thought I would share it with the group. Attacker has a really good lure here. They just slapped on Cisco WebEx. But what's important to know about the intended victim of this is they are Cisco customers. They have Cisco technology. They have a Cisco iron port. They make use of a lot of Cisco gear, software, and equipment. And what was fascinating to me is this was about researching a Docker engine error. And in what I see day to day in phishing are kind of more general enterprise themes: faxes, voicemail scanners, package delivery, your mailbox is over the quota. What was fascinating about this one is they must have been targeting a technical group, and a technical group that works with Docker, maybe developers, maybe QA. I'm not sure. I don't have visibility on who they were going after. I just get to see these. But that one was fascinating to me. They weren't really making making it a Cisco WebEx themed fish. They were just kind of slapping that on, I think, in order to make this look a little bit more legitimate. Seeing a couple Skype ones as well. Again, the one on the right is kind of in that same note of it's a voicemail, click here to listen to it. Based on how polished or lack of polish these are, I think the attackers probably are going to work with this a bit longer in order to get them to look more. The one thing the media really wants me to opine about is Zoom, especially with all the Zoom-related cybersecurity happenings that people have been hearing about in the news. They want to know if attackers are moving towards Zoom-related phishing emails. And we have seen a couple of them. I wouldn't consider them polished just yet. Here's one where the CEO is inviting you to a scheduled Zoom meeting, and they're attempting to get someone to click on a phishing website, which incidentally is hosted by Windows.net, which is a legitimate website. But they registered Zoom.meeting in order to pull this off. Another one that we're seeing, again, just awful colors, like not really even trying that hard right now to make a good looking Zoom lure. But similar sort of look and feel. But I would consider this really slapped together and lacking the polish necessary. So we're keeping our eye out there for these things. They haven't manifested just yet. One thing I'd remind people of is many of the foreign attackers, they've never worked in an enterprise environment. So they're just trying to guess on what our normal business email flow and communication looks like. And so they're probably going to experiment with some of these Zoom-related phishing lures until they get the look and feel down a little bit better. Last week we did publish a complete write-down on the WebEx one targeting remote workers. So if you'd want to see that, we have that in our blog, cofence.com. Okay, getting back to some of the data that we've been sharing with the group. So I've been working with Tim, one of the principals here, and one of the things that Cofence is going to be doing to make it easier for people that are ingesting indicators from their Threat Connect feed is I'm working on getting getting Pim a complimentary license and able to pull down our machine readable threat intel. We focus on indicators that are pre-click. So what I mean is we tend to write indicators on the makeup of a phishing lure, subjects, file attachment types, and that sort of thing. And we tend to not necessarily write rules or create threat intel about post-click things like, did an exe drop in a specific directory? And that's just Cofence. We're a phishing company, so we tend to do that. One of the things that one of our products, Triage, has is usually a system just for these customers, is imagine our customers that have SOC analysts worldwide that are taking in these user reports of suspicious emails. In that triage workflow, they're encouraged to write YAR rules that have those indicators. It's those rules that our ecosystem has been creating, that I've been putting together in these 2 YAR rules that we've been putting on GitHub just about every night, and we're getting these samples that I've been sharing with you all. And just so you can kind of get an understanding for who's receiving these, it's everybody. We don't have a single industry vertical that has not had COVID-19 coronavirus phishing emails make it past their secure email gateway stack into the inbox of their employees. Every single one of our customers and every single vertical has this problem right now, and we're continuing to watch it as this thing climbs. If you didn't know about our info center, go check it out. I don't know at times if I'm just spamming the email threats group on Slack with the screenshots. I put them all on our info center too. I do at times try to make sure that you all receive these before they make it through our production pipeline and hit our website. But this is where you'll be able to find these and go through some of the screenshots. And I look forward to telling the group when we have our Intel feed wired up for you all to consume automatically. And that's all I had. Thank you for the time today. I'll look at the Q&A now.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much, Aaron, for being here. And yeah, I'll let you handle the Q&A. It looks like most of them are directed to you.
Yeah, I saw a question there. If they're a Cofence customer, do they need to write these rules? No, these already get distributed automatically through Triage, assuming that you have our Triage product. Another question is, will these slides be available afterwards? Can we use some of these examples in our comms to staff? You can absolutely, you don't actually need these slides. All of these samples I shared with you is on our Coronavirus Info Center, and they're marked in a way that you can use them for your own staff. It's just not for commercial use, so you can't resell the content. But yeah, everything on that Info Center, including infographics, templates that you can use to communicate with your staff, is there and free for the world to use.
I'll also flag that we do record these sessions, and this whole session, including everything Aaron just covered, will be available on our YouTube page soon. Faster than DEF CON gets their videos up. That's what I can promise.
All right.
All right. And if we don't have any other questions, then I think that covers it for this week. Thank you, Aaron. Thank you, Martin, for being here. I really appreciate both of you stepping up and contributing. Anybody on the webinar who's watching, please feel free to reach out to us if you want to contribute, if you want to speak at one of these. Pitch us. I would love to hear it. And Josh, unless you have anything, I think we can call it a day.
No, I'm good. Thanks a lot, Aaron. That was just a really great, super content-rich talk. So much appreciated.
Oh, that's right. And Aaron's background, the meme wall, was
Yep, that's a wall in our office. So I took a picture of it before I quarantined to my garage. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thanks everybody for being here. Have a great day.